And as we see COVID picking up the pace around the world, Greg, it's been another very difficult day in Victoria with those numbers rising.
Yes, Kieran, it's a shocking day in Victoria, really, and I can't believe there are people who still think it's a minor affliction, but very bad situation around the world. Well over 13 million cases now. In the United States, just under 150,000 people dead. A whole slew of new states, North Carolina, Louisiana, Kentucky, recording record infection rates. The death rate generally is going down a little bit because there are some sort of treatments which don't cure the disease but cut the death rate, and a lot more younger people are getting the disease and fewer of them die. But there are still going to be many, many more dead people out of this. A lot more dead Victorians, a lot more dead Americans, a lot more dead people all over the world.
President Trump made some remarks overnight in a briefing on this issue. I want to play that for our viewers and then get your thoughts on it.
Some areas of our country are doing very well, others are doing less well. It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is. It's what we have. You look over the world, it's all over the world, and it tends to do that. The governors are working very, very hard, and we are supporting them 100%.
Greg, it's quite a change of tone there from the president.
Yeah, Kieran, so this is good news in a way. The president has decided to be the president again. He had an absolute train wreck of an interview on Fox News, which is the network most generally sympathetic to him, with Chris Wallace, who's a perfectly professional interviewer, where just a couple of days ago, where Trump was saying that it was not a very serious matter. The US had the lowest mortality rate in the world. A truly bizarre claim. The US has a high mortality rate in terms of deaths per million of population, and even in terms of deaths per COVID case recorded, it's in about the middle of the pack. So for the president to say something just so utterly wacky, even his own base was starting to lose faith in him. He's a long way behind in the polls, which is not to say he can't win. But clearly he's done what he's very good at, which is pivot and change. And today it's a completely different president. Wear your mask. This is a very serious situation. The outbreak in Texas and Florida is very serious. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I always wear a mask myself. Now, this is completely inconsistent with the Trump of, 4 or 5 days ago. But on the other hand, it's good news that the president is taking it seriously and is trying to give some leadership.
And the other thing that he's taking very seriously is trying to get his lines right against Joe Biden. We're just barely over 100 days away from the presidential election, Greg.
Yeah, this is a very serious situation for Trump. Trump can still win. He's the incumbent and he has a lot of levers to pull, a lot of money to spend. But he's a long way behind. He's much further behind Biden now than he was behind Hillary Clinton last time. And he won by the merest whisker of a cigarette paper. What was his margin in Michigan? 10,000 votes or something. I think it's clear now that he's got 3 strong lines of attack against Biden. One is Biden is too old and doddery. He's in the first stages of senility in Trump's language. Second, that Biden is very soft on China. His whole career has been soft on China. And third, that he's a wholly owned captive of the far left of the Democratic Party. And indeed, Biden's energy policy and social policies have gone a long way left. And then the fourth thing he's doing is he's targeting minority communities, because the old Joe Biden used to be very tough on crime and so on. So if there's a huge reaction against the police force, Trump wants to tell black voters, well, Biden used to be the guy saying more police, bigger, and so on. Whether all of that's going to be enough is very unclear. But Trump last time was a very destructive politician. He's extremely good at strategic communications and at really targeting vulnerabilities of an opponent. If he can redefine Joe Biden in the American mind, then he's got a chance.
Now, let's look at one of those issues you touched on, China, because Secretary of State Pompeo, has met with Boris Johnson at number 10 Downing Street, and this was one of the the issues where he praised the UK government. Let's have a listen to what Mike Pompeo said.
I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the British government for its principled responses to these challenges. You've made a sovereign decision to ban Huawei from future 5G networks. You've joined other free nations to condemn China's broken promises on the Sino-British Treaty. You generously opened your doors to Hongkongers who seek nothing more than fleeing just for some freedom. And yesterday you suspended your extradition treaty and extended your arms embargo on China to Hong Kong itself. We support those sovereign choices. We think well done.
Greg Sheridan, what do you make of Mike Pompeo's initiative, meeting with Boris Johnson on that matter, but also, I guess, putting the presidential race to one side? The fact is, there's a lot of bipartisanship in Washington, isn't there, when it comes to the assertiveness, the threat of China?
There is, Kieran, in Washington, in London, in Canberra, in Canada, all over the world, there's now increasing bipartisanship on the hegemonic threat of China. In fact, I'm going to write about this at length in The Australian tomorrow. We are entering an era now, not of globalisation, not of multilateralism, but of like-minded alliances. And the key like-minded alliance in the world is the Five Eyes, the US, Canada, Britain, Australia and New Zealand. And we're huddling ever closer together in how to deal with China and also to some extent how to deal with Russia. Big report today in Britain about Russian interference in British elections. I think Pompeo is very happy with the British decision to ban Huawei. It's bizarre, frankly, that the British didn't do this before. They were very divided internally about it. Europe has been slow to get the strategic reality of China, but it certainly understands what's going on now. And even should Trump lose in November, and even despite Trump saying that Biden is soft on China, I think this like-minded gathering in terms of dealing with China together, because we're much stronger together, that is going to accelerate. That's going to be a defining feature of our times.
Well, the Prime Minister spoke to Donald Trump last week, Greg, and this was, well, I guess not specifically about this notion of like-minded nations, but they did, in a way, because they spoke about the quadrilateral security dialogue between Australia, the US and Japan and India, which is, I guess, exactly the sort of thing you're talking about.
Absolutely, Kieran. Everything the Australian government is doing at the moment is really directed towards assembling like-minded coalitions. So we've really extended the purpose and reach and consequence of the Five Eyes arrangements. Josh Frydenberg has instituted Five Eyes finance ministers. We're doing everything we can to put life into the Quads. We've got a bad record on the Quads because Kevin Rudd famously withdrew Australia from the Quads in a very bad decision when he was Prime Minister, said he didn't want to have anything more to do with the Quads. So we've always had a bit of a credibility issue on that score, but the Quads are coming back to life. India and Japan are critical like-minded nations with us. It's not just the Five Eyes, it's just not the Anglo nations. You see it in our dialogues with Vietnam and Indonesia, in the strategic partnership with India. The whole world, there's a report in the Washington Post a day or two ago that Japan now has a big fund to help companies move their production chains out of China. So they want to protect their supply chains, whether they have manufacturing, go back to Japan or go somewhere else in Southeast Asia. Now, everybody is responding to Beijing's behaviour over the last 12 or 24 months. They don't want to contain China. They're not hostile to China, but they're not going to be pushed around, and they're not going to have China become a hegemonic power in this part of the world. Even the Brits are going to, deploy an aircraft carrier to our part of the world on a long deployment. Yeah. I think the like-minded nations are pulling together, and the Morrison government has certainly been at the fore of this.
Greg Sheridan, great to talk to you next week. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Kieran.